Good evening, Bula Vinaka and Namaste. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Tonight we will be talking to founder of Drug Free World Fiji, Kalesi Volatabu. And as you know, it's been in the news for the past few years about the emergence of the issues surrounding drugs. Now, before, a lot was done in relation to green drugs. Marijuana, a lot of raids have taken place up in the highlands of Navosa, to the rough terrains in Kandavu, and into the Ba Highlands, Dhakaundrove, Tukavesi, and many other well-known spots. Those continue with we knowing that police have now started to employ different types of tactics and tools to try to fight this continuous emergence of marijuana. But from 2004 onwards, we saw the emergence of harder drugs in this community. In around 2004, people would remember one of the first ever meth labs was discovered with $1 billion bust right here in Laudala Beach in Suva. Things continued to progress. At that time, a lot of people didn't even know what was methamphetamine. But now the issue continues to grow into labs being found in different parts of the country. Many people easily getting drugs, hard drugs on the streets, and the concerns continue to worsen. In the middle of all of this, Kalesi Volatabu, the founder of Drug Free World Fiji, comes through and tries to make a difference. One organization called the Ministry of Moms, before COVID-19, trying very hard for the main reason that their children were starting to get exposed to this danger that can even take lives. So tonight, thank you, Kalesi, for coming on Fiji Village Straight Talk, a real pressing issue, and I'm sure the audience are looking forward to the show tonight.
Thank you for having me, yes.
Kalesi, first of all, you are from Fiji,
Yes.
and we know that you were in Australia in the early part of your life. If you can talk about, first of all, about your exposure to these drugs and how it affected you.
Yeah. You know what, before we even talk about drugs, we need to remember the humanity behind it. Eh? So my experience, so I'm the eldest of three. We never really had religion at home. Our religion was rugby. We lived and breathed rugby. My dad played rugby for the longest time, and that's all we knew. And obviously during his time, when he played rugby, whether they win or they lose, they celebrated with alcohol. And that wouldn't be just a one sitting. They would binge. You know, he'd leave home on a Saturday and he won't get home till Sunday or Monday. So that was, you know, my early experience with alcohol abuse in the home. We live on the hill at home, and, you know, we stand on the hill and we watch. If Dad falls out of the taxi, if he stepped out and he was standing up, it's going to be a good night. But if he fell out of the taxi, it was going to be a different story at night. So what it was domestic violence at home. You know, you grew up with that, so violence became normal. Alcohol became normal. I lost my innocence at such an early age because I had to look after my two younger siblings to make sure that they were okay. That, you know, when they come home from school without even me opening my books to my homework, I need to make sure that they were okay, they're fed, they've done their homework. And then obviously making sure that they're safe when Dad goes into his rampage. You know, as children, as survivors of domestic violence, we are not told what's happening, but we hear everything as children. And I always wondered why my neighbor never stepped in. I always wondered why my family never did anything. That was the darkest time, and I thought, you know, as children growing up in those kind of violent homes, why did we have to put up with that? At 13, Mum and Dad sent me to Australia. I was told I was going for a visit, and that was it. I was excited.
It was mutual agreement that you went?
For me, it was like I was going for a holiday, and I was excited to come back. That was, you know, more than excited getting on a plane. I've never left Fiji, let alone get on a plane. Yeah. So, but when I went through the whole process of getting on the plane and going to Sydney, That was a huge culture shock because everybody spoke different. They had an accent, I couldn't understand it. They ate different food, yes. Everything was foreign to me. So I was told I was going over for 4 weeks and that was it. Little did I know, as soon as I got on the other side, my passport was taken from me. That was it. Nothing was told. So when 4 weeks came, obviously my family that I met with and stayed with, you know, they pulled out the red carpet, took me sightseeing as they do when you get relatives come from the island. 4 weeks came, I rang Mom and I said, Mom, can I come home? At 13, and when she said no, my whole life changed because I never thought at 13 my mom would say no to me or even, you know, take her under her wings. So the family knew then that I wasn't coming back. The doors, you know, started closing, you know, got really cold within the homes. They wouldn't talk to you. If you were in the kitchen opening the cupboard, they'd be screaming at you. What are you doing in the cupboard? Get out. You know, you can only handle that for so long then.
Why were you hiding in the cupboard?
Opening cupboards to look for food. So they were wondering, like, why was I opening the cupboards? And I was hungry. I was 13. I needed my mum more than anything, or my parent, anyone. Those doors started closing, so I did couch surfing. I went from one home to the next home, whoever would open their door.
So you left your relatives and...
Yeah. Went to a church thinking that they would take me in. Because I always thought, you know, if you needed the help, you go to a church. That was even worse, going to the church, because they just have to look at you. They judge you straight away. So ended up on the streets of Sydney.
At 13?
At 13. That's the hardest thing. And like, if my circumstances was different, I wouldn't have ended up on the streets. So obviously on the street, 3 years I was on the streets. You do certain things when you're on the streets. Obviously drugs was just, that was just, you know, part and parcel of being on the street. Why did I stay on the street for so long? Because there were young people just like me. They were kicked out, abandoned, unloved. My drug of choice wasn't marijuana. Marijuana did absolutely nothing for me. Yeah. Ice was my security. But then on the ice, you do stupid things. Man, I placed myself in so many positions or so many places that I shouldn't have. It's lucky that I'm still sitting here. Obviously, you know, I was violently raped when I was 16, physically abused, tried to commit suicide a few times. Why? I never had, you know, when you talk about parents play a huge role. Yeah, I never had that. So obviously at 17, I met someone that helped me escape the streets. It wasn't love at first sight. He was literally the door that got me off the streets. Yeah, we moved in together, trying to settle down. He wasn't Fijian at all, so he was half Irish, half Welsh, different family dynamics whatsoever. Whereas with us Fijian, we are from a communal, whereas where he was from, nucleus, just mum and dad and them. That was it. And that was a struggle on his own. We started living together and he was white and I was black, man. So the discrimination, the racism, I copped it. But for me, he was my escape. I needed to get off the streets. We moved in together. Our son was born in 1991. At 18-month-old, there was a knock at the door in the middle of the night. 10:30 at night, I knew, before I even opened the door, who was going to be behind that, because obviously it was nothing but bad news behind the closed door. I opened the door and that was immigration officers were there. My whole world just got changed all over again, because I thought, why? You know, and they said, we're here, you're here illegally. Nobody told me that I needed a visa to stay in the country.
So your passport was taken off you in that first 4 weeks. You never saw your passport again?
No. After the 4 weeks, I was told, you go out there and get a job and you send money back home. We don't call it trafficking here in Fiji, but that's what happened to me. I was trafficked into another country under the pretense of going to stay with family. Yeah. And I didn't know. So
what happened when the immigration officials came?
They escorted me away that night. I only had 5 seconds to say goodbye to my son, like 18 months. And I was only 18 at the time. They handcuffed me, took me to the nearest police station. They got me to the police station, and the immigration officers told the police station just process her like you would any criminal. So I was fingerprinted, strip searched, and put in a 10-foot cell. Thin mattress on the floor, got on my hands and knees. I have never prayed. After everything that I've gone through, I never knew there was a God that would listen to me or hear me. Yeah. But when you hit rock bottom, there's only one thing that I could do was pray. Got on my hands and knees and I prayed, Lord, if you help me out of this mess, I promise that I'll give my life for one child. Just one child. Trying to give them the hope that they don't have to go through what I've gone through. Yeah. 3 days later, I got transferred to Villawood Detention Centre. I came out of the van and they give me my ration, your soap, your toiletry, change of clothes. Got out and I looked up and I see the barbed wire and I just thought, wow. I never dreamt when I left Fiji in 1987 at 13, 5 years later, that I would be behind these walls. Yeah. And I just thought, why did I do that was so wrong? Wasn't I a great daughter? Yeah. Was this what my life was supposed to be? Yeah. Obviously, mental issues with me, played really hard. Like I said, it was just, for me, it was just taking one step at a time. That's it. Don't look at tomorrow, don't look at next week. Just if you can just survive for the next 24 hours, you'll be fine. Yeah. So I was there for a few months and then I got released into the community. And then a few months after that, I got the news. 1993, I received the best news. My permanent residency came through. And I thought, wow. And I asked the case officer from immigration, how did you even find me? Because I didn't even know my neighbors. Yeah. And they did know me. And the immigration officer explained to me it takes 3 phone calls for them to come out and get you. First, they just take little details, your name, whereabouts, that's it. Second phone call, they needed to know your full personal details, your date of birth, your address, who are you staying with. So all this personal information, only certain people know that because I didn't even know my neighbors. Third phone call from the same person, they deployed a team to watch me for 2 weeks. And I just thought, man, I must have done something horribly wrong, yeah, to deserve this. In the end, it was just one of my family that reported me to immigration. So for me, family, not blood. It's not just by blood. For me, family are those that have crossed my path, those that I've walked the streets with, those that I have direct delivered to, they become my family. There's a connection that I found with them every step, through what I've gone through. So as soon as I got my permanent residency, and I thought, okay, what's the first thing that I'm going to do? First thing I did was certificate in engineering. I need to do something that was so extreme to what was perceived for a female to do. Then went into corrections, started working in corrections in 1998 as a probation parole officer. And then from there, worked in went into the prisons as a welfare officer. Police had hunted me in New South Wales, Australia. Headhunted me, offered me a position to work with young offenders committing armed robbery throughout New South Wales. And I thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot. Yeah. So I did that for about 2 years, received the award in 2002 for the State Emergency Services Award for a project, literally, we ran with these young offenders. I needed to create programs and actually to do that. And that was so innovative for police to do. From there, I went on to working with the Public Commissioner and the Protective Commission, working with the Australian High Court and the Mental Health Tribunal. Did that for 2 years. And I thought, you know what? I've worked in civilian roles. I want to see what it's like to wear a uniform. Threw my hat in the ring, got my job as a prison officer, working for about 5 years, male prisons. Never worked with female. I feel more comfortable with male, yeah. And I think it goes back to when I was on the streets and my crew was boys. Always felt safe with men. So, these were in different maximum security prisons. As a prison officer, it's something, wow, I thought I'd just throw my head in and see how I go. But you know what, as I look back, it's only by the grace of God that I'm standing on this side of the fence. And if I can, be a prison officer, if I can do something to help someone not come back in, why not? Then I did a sea change, went to a different state, Brisbane. Then I worked in a remand center. One remand center, 1,400 was the population. I was in charge of education and program. When we talk about recidivism, what do we need to do? So my role was study the trend, see what's happening, what really needs to be implemented, create a program for them to offending behavior, and with any luck, any chance, that you'll stop them from coming back. From there, went to Victoria, Melbourne, Victoria, found myself a job as the executive director of a drug and alcohol rehab. That's when I started to see, okay, I never wanted to go into rehab, but somehow I just got in there. I came to Fiji in 2018 for a holiday. Yeah, and I met a few dignitaries when I was here, Inia Seruiratu actually, and he said, can you come back and help Fiji? And I said, why?
We'll talk about that shortly, but I want to take you back to Australia. I know it was quite emotional for you when you talked about your life on the streets, but you talked about you went straight for ice, methamphetamine.
Yeah.
And that was back, way back, I think that was a drug that was not well known here in Fiji. Now, why were you drawn towards ice and what did it do to you?
Okay, so 1987 is when I left Fiji, right? So when I left Fiji, that was in the late 80s, early 90s. When I was on the streets 3 years, so majority King's Cross. I know some people know what King's Cross was all about in the late 80s or 90s even. That was the Australia capital for prostitution and drugs, where what sort of hard drugs you might, you want to find, that's where you find it. So that's, for me, marijuana, I tasted, man, that relaxed. I didn't want anything to relax me. I needed to be on the go constantly. I think because of all the hurts and the wounds that I have, I needed something that was so hardcore to numb it. Yeah, and I didn't care when I was on the meth. I didn't care what I did to myself or what I did to others.
Nothing mattered.
Nothing mattered. Yeah. If I see someone that's wearing, something that I want, I'll just go up and knock them. Like you roll them, literally, and that's how you survive on the street.
And if you didn't take it?
If I didn't, I wanted it.
But what if you couldn't get it?
I get it for somebody else. Yeah. And that was 3 years of running the streets, and you do things. You steal, you roll people
you hurt
for whatever.
People?
Yeah.
They say it's very addictive, highly addictive. That some people, when they take meth, or normally what people call ice, or we'll go to other names on the streets that we discovered as we talked about it, it's very hard for you to leave without support. So you talked about support, and we are currently talking about you. How hard was it for you to leave?
And you know what? It takes an addict 4 to 7 times to actually be able to walk away from it. Yeah. For me, right in the middle of it, I was addicted to it. I was used to it. That was like my everyday thing. And I think what it was, you get to a point where your willpower jumps in and saying, you know what, enough is enough. You need to straighten up. And for anything, it was my child. When I met the person that took me off the street, helped me escape, he reminded me of what a family was. That was something that I needed. And I thought the drug was the family for me. The young people that hung with me. Because you know what? I didn't just wake up and I wanted to take drugs. Heck no. Things drove me to that. There was a sense of belonging. I needed that sense of belonging. I found that first in the streets. But then, I knew that I wouldn't survive another 2 months if I stayed on the streets. When I met him, he shared, he gave me the warmth that I was looking for. He gave me the love that I wanted. And I didn't get it from my parents. And I didn't know what love was in a relationship, let alone from anybody else. So with him, literally, the constant support that I got from him and his family, my child, he was my blessing. Yeah. Because I knew then, if I can give the love that I wanted to my child, that would be the answer for me. And everybody's different. They give up differently. And, you know, everyone has different crossroads.
Have you made peace with your parents?
I have. Took a lot of effort. 20 years it took me to come back and actually sit them down and tell them my story. Do you know how hard it is? When I sat there and I told them, I need you to hear what I went through when you made that decision to send me to Australia. You never foreseen what would happen to me, but I will tell you. But at the same time, I've forgiven you. I need to work on my anger. Yeah, they were both in tears because they didn't realize the decision they made. Yeah, really changed my life as well. Not for the better. Yeah. People would ask me that. Well, you know, how long it took you to forgive your parents. Yeah.
There's a lot of parents watching this show.
Yeah.
And we had police here a few weeks ago, where Chief of Operations said the erosion of morals and values, virtues in this country, which is resulting in our children loitering on the streets. The latest information coming out, the Y factor for the children on the streets, majority of them have one issue. They either do not feel safe at home, or there's issues surrounding child abuse. What is your message to the parents out there, knowing that a negligible parent can result in a child going to the streets, getting violated, drugged up, and used in any way?
That's right. Yeah.
What's your message to the parents?
My message to the parents, if you're listening or you're watching this right now, you play a pivotal role in children's life. You know what? I know it's what it's like to drive a car. You need to get your license first to drive a car. You need to go through all different lessons for that. To be a parent, you don't. The words that you say, how you treat your children, you are the first role models for the children. Don't expect the teachers or anybody else from the outside to do that. You are the very first. What you do, what you say, they copy you. We as children, we listen to what you say, we see what action you make. Don't say a thing and do something else. That does not work. We remember everything that you say. We need love, we need warmth. Children need to communicate with you, not a rigid teaching. No, sit down, spend 10, 15 minutes of your time every day. Put those smartphones away. Instead of going and checking your TikToks or Facebook, put that away. Sit down with your children. Have a conversation with them. Ask them, what are they going through? You know, what's happening with them? There are certain things your children are being influenced with. Instead of them going outside and being influenced by somebody else, please create a platform that they can come to you first and talk to you. Become a friend to them. You know, not as, you know, coming down really harsh on them, because you as parents, and I'm probably someone is sitting there and looking at me right now thinking, wow, what would I know? I was a child once and I know what it's like. You know, just bring yourself down, create that space for the young people to talk to their parents, and the parents have to do the same. And I know obligations take parents away from their responsibility, whether it be for the church, whether it be for the vanua or for the family. But remember, your Jerusalem, your family comes first than anything. Because when the kids are idle, when they don't have boundaries set for them, when they don't have security, they are going to go out looking for that sense of belonging. They're going to go outside and look for a sense of family.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
playing outside?
Because my dad is thinking my home is gonna be super cool.
No way!
Yeah, he makes me a new desk.
Well, then we can stay together.
He's also gonna paint my walls.
Where did he get this tooth from?
Kasabian, they have everything you need.
I wish my dad could do that.
Because your dad is not Kasabian's dad.
Dad, go to Kasabian!
About 20 years ago, we had a major drug bust, and you would remember you would have been part of the operations at Laudala Beach. A lot of people in Fiji did not know what was methamphetamine. And what we are picking up on, people are saying it's readily available. Just the issue in relation to General Secretary, was that a tactical move that he ejected himself from Parliament?
Personally, it's unfortunate.
How are you dealing with those police officers who may be allegedly involved in this?
Vijay, no one is above the law.
We assure you that we will be having police officers around.
Super Rugby is not an easy competition to compete in. Success doesn't just happen overnight.
Bula Vinaka, I am Vijay Narayan. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan, brought to you by Kasabias, specializing in your need.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, the founder of Drug Free World Fiji, Kalesi Volatabu. Kalesi, we'll go back to 2018 when you said you came for a visit and you met with the Minister for Defense at the time, Inia Seruiratu. He needed some help from you.
Yes.
What did he want?
Okay, so he was telling me that the Fiji government actually need the help to fight drugs. For me, I didn't know how bad the story was here, so he got me to go and see a few agencies, a few stakeholders, just to see if I can. What he was saying was what everybody else was saying, which was really good. So I went to St Giles, I went to prisons, Fiji prisons, met with the current Fiji prison commissioner right now. Ms. Salate Palapasa, she was lovely. They gave, literally just sitting there and hearing what they were saying. They were seeing so many increasing numbers of young people coming in, drug-related offences. And then obviously went to Ministry of Health, Education, went to FNU, and then one of the Itoke Provincial Council as well. So it was like different people that I spoke to, different areas.
You were on a holiday, you came
was
in
on holiday.
and this was suggested to you.
Yeah.
And what you started discovering?
Oh, there was, what I was hearing, we had a problem here, but nobody was, no one was, coming forward to give me data, whether it be statistics or anything else. Everybody were really, closely guarded with those statistics, whether it be from the police, Ministry of Health, Education, all across the board. So it's like everybody's saying we have drugs, but like we don't know what sort of drugs. They say green, okay, so we know substantially that's marijuana, but when they say white, there was so many myths and misconceptions out there. When they say white, they couldn't articulate whether it be crystal meth or methamphetamine, whether it was cocaine, whether it was heroin for that matter. In my head, Fiji was like 1987 when I left. Drug of choice at that time was marijuana. It happened behind closed door. When I came back, oh wow, total different landscape. So I came in 2018, did just those little short meetings, and then he said, you need to come back and help the government trying to fight the drugs off the street. And I said, okay, let me just go back and think about it. I was the executive director of a drug and alcohol rehab at the time. My whole focus was like, would Fiji consider a drug and alcohol rehab in the country? Would that be a possibility? Yes. When I came in 2018, Like I said, nobody took accountability. Nobody took responsibility to say, we do have a problem. We need action. Nobody did that at that time.
Was it being hidden?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Do you know why?
Oh, I'm not even quite sure. And the thing is...
But he couldn't get data.
No.
Couldn't get to know how bad it is, but
No.
on the ground, when you spoke to people, they
Yeah.
told you how bad it was.
Yes, definitely. So when I came back in 2019, the first thing I needed to do was, everybody's saying we have a drug problem, but there was nothing, there was no significant data to tell us, okay, do we really have a bad problem? Yeah. So what we did, initially the first 4 weeks, going out and just did a survey, data collection. Man, I wasn't ready for the information that I got at that time.
What did you find out?
I found, so we did 53 people collectively as a whole, 53 people, and they were from Suva, Nosuri, to the west, Vanua Levu, Lambasa, even to Obalau, Lebuka. They were all different people, just handpicked. And they were from 19 to 50 years old. And then obviously asking them from your community, in your area, what do you see? What are some of the problems? What drugs? When I talk about drugs, what drugs comes up for you? So I was only ready for marijuana, and that was it. Nah, they were saying there's cocaine, there's crystal meth, there's heroin. That got me really stirred because it's like, wow, heroin's in this country? Didn't even know heroin was here. Ecstasy, LSD, so they listed all these drugs, which I didn't even know. And then the people because I created the survey to dig deeper. So you don't just give me information. I need to know if you're a user, how old were you when you started using? Why did you start using? Like how much is this drug costing you a week? How are you funding this? How are you using this? Are you smoking it intravenous or snorting it? Yeah, that was...
What did you find out based on that?
Yeah, so out of 53, 17 or 20 of them, all users, at least 5, oh man, that was a huge number. It was a huge number even deal. So there was a whole different scope of these young people. Majority of them were intravenous because it's either crystal meth that they shoot or heroin that they shoot. Just to sit down and hear their story, why they started, when did they start, how did they get themselves into this mess? Yeah. The youngest person, obviously, that we interviewed, he was 11 years old, and he was shooting. He was actually doing intravenous.
And this 11-year-old was from Suva?
From Suva, yeah.
From Suva, where was he getting the drug from?
It can be anywhere. So he said it's so easy for him to get it. And for me, it was like, how can you possibly say it's so easy for you to get it?
Where did he get the money from?
That's the thing. So he was on the street. So either he robbed, steal, or he sold himself.
Now going back to when I discussed about, and you used meth before,
Yeah.
when you were in that situation,
Yeah.
You could do anything
Yeah.
to get that hit,
Yeah.
even if you took a life?
There is a certain extent where your conscience gets in, whether you want to take a life or not. But when you're in that rage, when you're in that meth rage, you don't care. You don't really care if it's your relative standing in front of you. Yeah. And that's how bad it is.
So for the 11-year-old that you interviewed,
Yeah.
was he left on the streets
He
by
was.
his parents?
Just to hear his story, he said he was sent from one of the maritime islands to come and school, stayed with the family here in urban areas, obviously in Suva, and then abuse happened within the home, so he didn't feel safe. For him, it was safer to go on the streets and meet up with the young people. And that's how it was with him. It's just so sad. And you think, why couldn't you go back home to your parents, Don't they meet you? And he said, no, I'm okay. I'm all right. Yeah. And it's very appealing, these people, when they try to sell it. And, for him to use, so he would literally be a runner. He would run and use at the same time, which is...
Oh, so he's a peddler as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And they would use the young people to target other young people.
So you're seeing a pattern where young people are introduced to
Yes.
these highly addictive drugs.
Yeah.
Then, of course, they need it. Then they have to work for the dealer
Yeah.
to continue to get their shot.
Yeah.
How bad is that? How many young people are involved in these kind of situations?
All you got to look at is how many young people do we see on the streets? From those, 1 in 3 at least are that. 1 in 3. From those, now, think about it, after we did the survey to see how bad it was, we need to do a mapping. How would we do a plan of attack? How would we do this not just in the urban areas, but obviously in the rural areas as well? And see if there is an urban shift between the two. Yes, there was. So for us to go out, like we have direct delivery to over 120,000 people here in Fiji. That's a lot. That's quite a lot. And the thing is, through those workshop or, just going on the streets, talking to people, whatever it may be, people would come up then. Because the thing is, when we do the drug awareness, we share our survival stories. We share our stories. And it is on that platform people come forward and start talking to us about everything. Half of the time we're not even ready. Some of the intel are so confronting that you wouldn't even think it's happening here, but it is here.
So what you're saying, we should not be living in denial because the reality is on the ground, readily available, and everyone from young to old are getting hooked on it, getting very dangerous out there. Are we in dangerous waters already?
Yes, we are. We already are. If I stand back and look at, okay, you talked about the biggest drug lab that was busted here in 2002. That was crystal meth or methamphetamine. But did you realize in 2000 we had a huge bust here for heroin, and that was 351 kilos of heroin here. So you have the heroin already, then you have the meth. Like the cocaine floats in and out in the country, like, tons and tons of it. Obviously, everybody's saying it is trafficked through Fiji to other countries, whether it be Australia being the cocaine haven right now. The demand for it is huge. Whether it be New Zealand, whether it be the United States, or even other countries as well. So they're saying it's been trafficked out and nothing here. But I'm sorry, domestically, we have a demand for these drugs right now.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because sometimes you just said it's just being transshipped and we do not have a problem here. Now you have been working with more than 120,000 people on the ground. How high is the usage here of hard drugs? Highly addictive drugs?
Very, very high. And it's, you know what, you can't just say it's the grassroots people are addicted to this. Nah. We're talking about white collar people. We're talking about expat. The demands that they have. You're looking at the tourists that are coming in. You know what? I was so glad when the border was closed during COVID, because then we thought, okay, nothing is flying in or out of this country. But as soon as the border opened, tourists start coming in and everything, because that's where the problem was. All you got to stand back and look at the party scenes that we have. Just talking to people, even they come out and they said, majority of the time when we talk about the cocaine, because it's, a very lucrative business when you get into it, but then the people it attracts, it's a different clientele altogether. When you say marijuana, meth, or speed, you have a certain core that actually has a buy-in for that. But when you look at cocaine, the heroin, different market altogether. And here in Fiji, it's really bad. In
your profiling, and you continue to do that, of course you listed with people who are neglected, who are on the streets, and victims of domestic violence. There's one core group, definitely, that is taking this. But on the higher end, where people, there's stories coming out of drivers, taxi drivers, and other students thinking that they can use these drugs and it is to their advantage to stay awake at night, and the dangers then associated with them, if you can talk about that.
Yeah. We were, so if I'd use an incident or an example, we were doing an outreach close to one of the universities. So the students would just come out and start talking and sharing. They want to know more and everything else. So we just allow them to talk. So they would say, you know what, math is really good. Helps me study, stay up late at night and everything else. So you just sit there and you hear them talk about the experiences. And for us, it's like, those are just lies, what peddlers are trying to tell you, because they want to make a buck. They want to make a sale. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if you think you're going to finish your degree by staying on that drug, no. You can find yourself in custody or in St Giles for that matter. And that's the saddest thing is, there was this other incident, 2019, I think it was, a young girl, she's 16, was just telling mom, I'm just going to my friend's house, we're gonna, just to do our homework. Mom and dad obviously were too busy, they didn't even realize where she was going. She was meeting up with her friends and they were going to somebody else's house. They sit around, have a small mix, and you think, okay, parents had no idea, all parents thought that she was at a friend's house. Doing a small mix, and obviously a piss pipe comes out. So it's marijuana, but it was laced with meth. That's what's, the dangerous thing here in Fiji. People have a tendency to mix cocktail, and it's nothing for them. It's like, having Skittles or lollies. So this young girl obviously didn't realize what she was taking in, man. For 4 weeks she spent in St Giles. Yeah, the parents, her reality became something out of a horror show for the parents. They go to visit her and she was somebody else. So for her, she's got to be dependent on medication now. She was only 16. And that goes back down to the parents. It's like, these young people, they will go out. If you're not home and play your role as, loving parents to your children, they're going to go out looking, finding for some excitement, looking for something to do.
And these are some of these innocent children, they do not even know what they're getting into.
No, they don't. They literally are not. And the thing is, when you look back, when you look at our society here in Fiji, we don't have a tendency to groom leaders. We are more followers than anything. Can we start looking at grooming our young people to be a sound, a sound leader? Because if they are leaders, nobody can walk up to them and say, you know what, let's try this next. No, they'll just walk the other way. We don't have that conversation with our children to say, you know what, this is what you can and cannot do. This is the reason why. We can't just say you can't do it and expect that not to happen, because young children, you tell them not to do it, they will do it. So the young girl, obviously she was just with a friend, was just saying, just have a go. It's just, it's just a joint. Let's just have a draw and see what happens. Let's just have some fun. Not knowing what she was, taking.
There's stories coming out that the first, at least the first one of these hard drugs, even some of the dealers ensure that these newbies get it for free.
Yeah.
To get them hooked.
To get
are
the
you
taste.
Getting that from the ground?
Yes, that was like back in 2020. To get a taste of what, when that data that we did in 2019, it was so explosive, and we were trying to campaign as hard as possible to say, you know what, let's look at preventative measure then. This is 4 years later. It's like, Fiji has this tendency of being reactive more than being proactive. Why can't we look at early intervention, early programs, putting something before it actually explodes in your face? That's where we're sitting right now.
Now my issue is that it seems like we've lived in denial.
Yeah.
And even some parents people who would be watching would be thinking, nah, that's not happening in Fiji. What's your message?
Wow. Mom and Dad, if your children in high school right now, even primary school, after going to so many different schools, whether it be primary or secondary, these kids, and we ask the question, from primary school even to secondary school, hands up if anybody know who Mary Jane is. Majority of the hands goes up. And it's like, okay, the teacher's standing back and they think, who's Mary Jane? Like, okay, who is she? How come, all these children know? Mary Jane is a street name for marijuana. You just hear that. So these kids will start using code names for drugs. The other one was, does anyone know Tina? Like, half of the hands go up and you think, oh my word. Okay, that's a street name for meth or ice. Yeah. So the thing is with parents, if you cannot be naive anymore. The smartphone is like a doorway to get them to TikTok, from YouTube to movies. They sensationalize what it's like. You know, it's cool to do drugs. Man, you can go places, you can do this, you can fly, you know, business, what do you call it? Planes, fancy planes. That's the idea of what people see on the movies and everything else. In reality, it's something else. It is not. It's nothing but jail. It's nothing but, suicide, domestic violence, you name it. All the horrific things that would happen.
Based on your statistics, you're seeing an increase in these people who you'd have seen involved in domestic violence, violent cases, and even contemplating suicide?
Yes. The thing is, okay, so we see, and I see it, I see the statistic that comes out with the police, you know, whether it be assaults, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be aggravated robbery, breaking into, whatever it is. My question is going to be, are they drug-related offences? There has to be a distinction between the two. But at the same time, those are reported cases. A lot of the things that happen here in Fiji are unreported. Everybody knows that all the time. You know, it's like in your community, and I've done it. Sometimes I've called police and say, you know what, there is a domestic happening right now. Oh, we don't have a vehicle. Or they're quite busy, but they'll be there. So they don't turn up for another hour or 2 hours. And I've had that with neighbors who would reach out and say, can you come and help us? We're trying to get the police, but nobody's coming. And they don't get there till 2 hours later. So obviously that's not just happening in one area, it's happening everywhere else. So
before we go to the break,
yeah,
you said you did your stats in 2019.
Yeah.
And then we entered COVID. And there was a suggestion that maybe COVID will make things better. But coming out of COVID, what we noticed that mental depression and other associated mental issues started thriving, mainly amongst the younger population. What did you see connected between COVID, the issue in relation to mental related issues and drugs?
Yeah. One of the big things that COVID brought was the poverty, the increasing poverty across the country. And then obviously peddlers, when they are targeting our young people, saying, you know what, we'll give you this if you just take and, you know, start selling at the schools or wherever it may be, down the street, we'll give you money. So a lot of that was happening. Then when we were going to all the different schools and talking to people, they are seeing more, increasing numbers of young people are even doing it in the schools, or even they're selling it in the school. In 29, when we were doing the research back then, there were small talks here, there, and everywhere where kids were used as runners and everything else, whereas now it is literally coming forward from the teachers that we spoke to, the schools that we've gone out to, that they are seeing these in their school. And it's not a rarity that it happens, no. It's more of a, maybe once or twice a month this happens. So, and it's not just in the school, it's like out in the community as well. So what did COVID do? I think when the borders were closed, and remember there were times there where we couldn't go from one suburb to the next. Everything was tight. You couldn't go from one area to the next area. Everyone's tight, yeah. But as soon as that was lifted, everything started shifting through. COVID, I think COVID, what it actually do was drive for people to go sell this, because it's one way of making money for them. Whereas when COVID hit, a lot of people were put off. And then obviously when they're at home, depressed, thinking maybe to mask whatever they're going through, they go and reach out for the you know, whether it be marijuana or ice or whatever the case may be, just to numb whatever they're going through. And I was quite shocked that it is the young people now. Whereas before, when we talked about meth and everything, it was more the adults, say 20 and over, going to the school. No, the children are actually throwing that at us.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Why are we playing on outside?
Because my dad is thinking my home is gonna be super cool.
No way!
Yeah, he makes me a new desk.
Well, then we can stay together.
He's also gonna paint my walls.
Where did you get this tooth from?
Kasabian, they have everything you need.
I wish my dad could do that.
Because your dad is not Kasabian's dad.
Dad, go to Kasabian!
About 20 years ago, we had a major drug bust, and you would remember, you would have been part of the operations at Laudala Beach. A lot of people in Fiji did not know what was methamphetamine. And what we are picking up on, people are saying it's readily available. Just the issue in relation to General Secretary, was that a tactical move that he ejected himself from Parliament?
Personally, it's unfortunate.
How are you dealing with those police officers who may be allegedly involved in this?
We assure you that we will be having police officers around.
Super Rugby is not an easy competition to compete in. Success doesn't just happen overnight.
Bula Vinaka, I am Vijay Narayan. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan. Brought to you by Kasabias, specializing in your need.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight is the founder of Drug Free World Fiji, Kalesi Volatabu, and we are talking about drugs and what it has been doing to our people, how it has been affecting people, the issues coming up about help sought, but the true picture unknown back in 2018, and then things also hidden where statistics hard to find, and the true reality of the situation on the ground where Kalesi and a team from Drug Free World Fiji went out and spoke to more than 120,000 people to try to establish what has been happening. Now, you have been doing a lot in schools.
Yeah.
We will not name schools here, but we know that you have done work in different parts of the country. If you can talk about what are you getting from the schools?
Really, when you go speaking in the urban areas, even to the rural areas, it's literally the same message or same information you're getting all the way through. How bad the drugs have seen. For instance, went into one in the West, just going and talking to the young people, but they are very more forward to actually share the information with us and what they're seeing. It's not just marijuana they're seeing, it's ice. What it looks like. They know the street name for these. They know how much it's. I didn't even know how much it was right now. But from what we got from the West is $25 or $5 or $10 even in different places. They know exactly where to get it from. They know how to get it, who's got it, yes, and what time of the day to go and purchase this thing. For us, it was like how, our target was youth in the beginning, whereas now, not youth anymore. It's young people. We need to go to the primary school. We need to have this frank conversation with these young children because they are being targeted. And the thing is, that was what we found. And it wasn't in one of the schools. We actually found one of the villages in the West we went to. And it was the young child, literally just sitting down, talanoa, they started talking. And children, they say things that, very dandy. Yeah, they will just openly talk about stuff. And this young girl was talking about how her father would get her to take it from home, from him, in her school bag, into the school, and somebody will purchase from her. And I just thought...
How old was this child?
7-year-old. So it's still in primary school. So can you imagine? That's what's happening in the rural areas. And that's one of the villages we went to speak to. What's happening here in Suva. And another one, right in the hinterlands we went to talk to, and it was the teachers. They found, you know, it's easier for them just to bring it to the school and the exchange happen, whether it be at the front of the school or in the school with other students. So it is so sad to see. And one thing that I like about Tonga, the Kingdom of Tonga, they changed their legislation and everything else. If a child is being charged or found with drugs on them, it's the parent that gets charged, not the
A child is a child, and that's why I raised the issue about negligent parents.
Yeah.
And because negligence is an offense in our law as well. And do you think we need to go in that direction based on what you see?
Definitely, without a doubt. Our children are the most vulnerable, yes, very fragile. Here in Fiji right now, they are being targeted by peddlers, and it's even worse if a parent is allowing them to do that.
The other issue is when we had a conversation, you're saying you're horrified by the number of syringes found in bags of students.
Some, yes. So one of the schools we went to see, and then obviously listening to the teachers. And the thing is, you know, teachers, they need the support more than anything. And they're getting these children into the school, and they can be carrying whatever it may be, whether it be, you know, whatever drugs they've got on them. Or even alcohol for that matter. For the safety of other students, they've got to put in strategies or, you know, set standards for the school. And that's what they did. They did a ramp. You know, when I say a ramp, they actually went in and go through the kids' desks or school bags. Yeah. And they found, you know, syringe in the school bag. For them, you know, who do they talk to? How do they have this conversation with the parents or with the children and everything else? So they're even needing the help, because it's not just happening anywhere else. This is happening right in the schools.
Our education system is lagging behind right now. We even have our curriculum that needs urgent reviews because it's been left on the wayside and hasn't caught up. And then now we've got this drug problem coming into our schools. Do you think our Ministry of Education is ready?
Definitely not. It's not just the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health. Our judicial system's not even ready. We don't even have a drug and alcohol rehab in the country. We don't have a needle exchange program because of the huge amount of intravenous use in this country. We don't even have a alternative program through the court system. So instead of, you know, you get charged with drugs or whatever it is, instead of throwing you into a rehab center or what do you call it, a remand center, why can't you do an intervention program while you're on bail? We don't have anything. We don't have strategies in place.
How serious is the problem in schools, and how urgent is it to ensure that we have drug awareness education consistently in our school system?
Yeah. How serious? As a heart attack. We need it, and we need it now. We can't wait 5 years. How many more children do we have to lose before we do something? Everybody knows we have a problem in this country, but nobody's stepping up to saying, you know what, instead of doing the talk fest, because I'm so over it, 2019 when we started seeing these, we're hearing the same thing over and over again. Can we look at some action? Can we start implementing programs or, you know, strategies within the school? Okay, how do I explain this? In the school, say for instance, we have identified a cohort of young people that are misbehaving or on borderline. Why don't we get a program, you know, specifically for them? Why can't we create a workshop, not a workshop, a program like a 6 to 8 week long program for them to do, instead of either suspending them, expelling them, because you're just shifting the problem here. For me, ideally, I would love to work with the most challenging young people. Yeah, instead of, because the thing is, I know what it's like, because I've lived that street, I've lived that road, and I know where there is lack in the system. Here in Fiji, we lack in so many things, it's not funny. So if we look at the schools, instead of just shutting the door and not doing anything and, you know, looking the other way, why can't we be serious and say, you know what, we've identified this cohort of young people. Can we do something with them specifically? So if we work on them and saying, okay, we look at the curriculum here in this country, why isn't it we haven't talked about drugs? Don't just wait till the one day, either hat week or whatever it is, or 1 week or 1 day, and do that. No, we need to do it 365 days out of the year, 53 weeks.
Included in the system,
Yes.
right throughout.
Yes, from primary
And
school.
stop living
secondary-
in denial.
Definitely, yes. It's the thing is, we've lost too many people. We've had so many family breakdowns. We've lost so many lives. How many more do we need to lose? You're not even safe to walk down the street. Like, you know, there's so many communities that have been identified as red zones, or, you know, you can't walk there at night and everything else. Come on, like, you know, community safety is being threatened here. What do we need to do?
And there's also incidents coming up in schools where if peddlers know that some students know about certain information, that they'll target them, and the risk for students increase as well.
Yes, very much so. Kids are very vulnerable. So they are the easiest target because, you know, it's just like, say for instance, you know, somebody wants to, say, do $500 business a week, whether it be selling marijuana or whatever the case may be. And, you know, you've got someone that's probably at home, mom and dad, you know, doesn't talk to them or whatever. There's no love at home or anything. There's no money given to them. So they're going to look for opportunities in order to buy whatever it is they want, whether it be a new phone, a new bag, new shoes. They will do anything to do that. Yeah, and it's a lot of people are saying, you know, you look cool, you'll be more popular, you know, you fit in if you do this.
You went to St Giles Hospital, and you were sharing a story with me about how difficult it was for you to see how the young people were coping there. A high percentage of them linked to drugs, but not enough or not anything close to a drug rehab facility. If you can share, what do we have in relation to that?
Yeah. So for us, it was literally, we needed to reach out to St Giles because of the data that we received. We've seen the increasing numbers of what was happening on the street. So we touched base into St Giles because that was perceived to be the mental institution. And at the same time, trying to see if there's any help we can offer. So we went in and just had a conversation with the staff, and then they said, you know, come in and do some workshop with the patients. And we thought, okay, that was great. So we started off with 5, just having a Tylenol session. The thing is, drugs is so complex on its own because everybody either don't want to talk about it because it's too many taboo subjects. The drugs, it's like whatever it may be, the shame factor, the stigma that's attached to it. And that's the biggest thing is when there is stigma attached to that, people won't come out and reach for help. So what we found when we got in there, we literally didn't care what drugs they were on. We didn't care where they came from. It was literally just having a Tylenol with a family member. And that's how we started. We were seeing, you know, the increasing number of young people coming through, sits down with them, have a conversation with them, you know, what sort of drugs, which community, which area, what did they get themselves into and everything. We got to a stage there that we were sitting with 30 to, you know, 35 people, male and female. They don't have what you call a program in there for them. For us, we just go in and we just create it organically by what we were seeing in front of us. We go in, we share the truth about drugs, you know, share with them our journey, our story. That allows them then to say, you know what, man, this is, you know, what I was into, and I didn't even know synthetic drugs was here in this country. I didn't even know till I was in there. Because one of the young people were talking about K2, and I just thought, what
is K2?
K2 is a drug-cooked marijuana. It's synthetic drugs. So, yeah, it's in a tablet form.
Very dangerous.
Very dangerous, very potent too, marijuana.
Highly addictive.
Very highly addictive. For him, I asked him, you know, how did you even, you know, how did you come across this?
How old was he?
19, and he was from the western side. Yeah. So it was... the thing is, like, you can't say this only happens to this cohort of people. This, you know, this drug taking only happens to this cohort. No, it doesn't. It does not discriminate. It doesn't care. what race you are, what gender you are, what religious belief, what political affiliation you are. Yes, doesn't care at all. Everybody is affected by this.
We see a lot more people too, seems like they're highly addictive and walking the streets. The other day, an unfortunate incident of a naked woman walking around in a neighborhood. Just over the weekend, a person trying to fight with an electric pole and trying to bang his head on the electric pole. Are you starting to get these kind of incidents too? And what is that an indicator of?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. One young man, he was glue sniffing was his thing, yeah, and he thought he was having a really long conversation with a popo tree. This was like in the middle of the morning, and everyone was laughing at him. After he went through his whole episode, so for about an hour or 2 hours after, he came out of that trance, sits him down and just have a talk with him. What's going on? Like, what happened? It was glue. So literally, he was a regular user of glue, and that was one of his time where he literally just had a really bad trip. Yeah, and that happens very often. And you'll see a lot more of this. It's not, so when we talk about hard drugs, we can't just say it'll happen to marijuana, or cocaine, crystal meth. No, the glue in itself, that's dangerous. Yeah.
Glue is a concern as well because
Yes.
it's not illegal.
No, it's not.
And people are taking the tins of glue, and
Yes.
police continue to confiscate, but they cannot charge people.
No.
How much work are you doing with police?
Wow. Initially, when we came in 2019, it was, there was a lot of challenges, teething process you have to go through, but now, 4 years later, man, it's been great working with them, going in with the narcotics team for that matter. We know each other really well, helping each other and obviously trying to help each other the best that we can, both of us sort of thing. So the booklets, getting the booklets out with the truth about drugs, just sharing that information if we can. And the thing is, when we go out to talk to people, we're not law enforcement. That's the thing. That's not our role to do. Our role is just to educate and give people the factual information. The arresting, whatever it is, it's the police officers that does that. Yes.
A drug-free world, Fiji does a lot of work. You definitely need a lot more support.
Yes.
But some would see you as one of the main threats in their business. Have you been under attack as well?
Yes, I have. When I started going on TV, June 2019, the end of June 2019, I'll never forget. Got on TV and just sharing, campaigning, lobbying for it. In August, that's when I started getting phone calls, and they were just saying, I know where you live. We've been watching you.
Who were these phone calls from?
They were just literally from random people I didn't even know, and I knew they were local people. But the one that I got in February, that one was from the Mexican cartel. And I knew then how bad of a problem we had here in the country. It confirmed every questions that I had, especially because everybody was just saying that cocaine is trafficked out of Australia out of Fiji, through Fiji to other countries. And I didn't know how bad it really was, and how wide the network here. And what we were doing at Drug Free World Fiji, campaigning and lobbying in front of the TV and everything else, we were being a threat to them. Yeah.
Have you taken this matter up with the police?
I have. Yes, I have. With the police, and it was during, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks after we went into lockdown as well. So that was, the borders started closing, which was really good. It was a bit of a breather. Took the matter up with the police and military as well. Yeah.
It's very concerning if you're saying that even people from the Mexican cartel trying to stop people from educating our country about drugs.
Yeah. The thing is, what we're doing is a huge threat to their livelihood or their money. And if we look at it right now in Australia, the demand for cocaine is huge. They've got gang warfares right now happening across the state. In the last week, they've had 5 killings because of the cocaine. And imagine where are We've got loads here in Fiji going to Australia or New Zealand for that matter. Yeah. So there are underground forces here in this country, and what we're doing is a big threat to them.
And urgent action required there as well.
Definitely, yeah.
I will just ask you about HIV because the recent numbers, the rapid increase is showing signs of us being the second highest in the Asia Pacific region. That's worrying.
Yes.
And now you were saying that majority of the drugs that people are shooting through the system is through syringes, and definitely the needles are being shared. What are you picking up from the ground?
2019, that was the very first thing we picked up. I was shocked. I didn't even know that we were intravenous users here. Majority of us were intravenous users. And then obviously because we don't have a needle exchange in this country where you can go and get a fresh needle, no. To go and purchase it, you can't just go and purchase a needle here in this country. You have to pay for it, or you have to have a prescription. You need a prescription in order to get one. But what we were finding was, you would get, one would say, they would go to a party and one needle, 5 people would share that needle. Yes, they will, put in money, throw in money to actually purchase, one hit for all of them to share one needle. And it was the saddest thing to hear that this was so rampant in the community, and that was happening all across the board. We haven't done research to see the link between HIV and drug use in this country. But I'm telling you, if 253 are the new cases for this year, imagine the unreported. Because nobody wants to go and get a HIV test. They don't want to do that. So to go and get tested is even far. So with the unreported, I am sure it is double that number that's unreported right now.
Kalesi, my final question. You've been a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
You've seen alcohol at its worst. You've seen drugs at its worst when you were in Australia. As you said, brutally violated from those who you loved, and then on the streets in Australia. But now, what is your purpose?
I remember my prayer when I was in that cell. When I got on my hands and knees, if I can give my life for one child, I don't care if the Mexican cartel or whoever it is against me, if I can save one child to walk away from those poisons, to give them hope, to inspire them to change their life, my job is done. And the thing is, when we came in 2019, we didn't get the support. We didn't get any financial support and everything else. I literally, with my partner at the time, we came in, we used the little money that we had to go out there, because the drive, it wasn't about us. It was looking for a brighter future for Fiji. I do not want to see Fiji as the narco island of the Pacific, because we're not. Fiji is by far the most beautiful, friendly, warmth island, and that's what I want to see it. I don't want Fiji to be linked to cocaine or drug, for that matter. So these fights that we've done, it's not about money. We're not, we're not driven by money. We're driven by people's lives. And every time we go out there and we do the drug awareness, we reached, over 120,000 people. That's by sheer purpose that we knew there was a calling for us, for me and my other half. It was like we needed to step out and see what brighter future we want for Fiji. And I know everything moves really slow in this country. Government moves really slow. Stakeholders, or whatever the case may be, how many more lives do we need to lose before Fiji pulls their pants up and say, you know what, enough is enough. We need to reach out to where these drugs are going to. Who are the market for this? Australia, New Zealand, America. Fiji is being targeted by it now. We have a crisis in this country because of those demands from overseas. We need the help here. We need the health system needs to be fixed, the school system, judicial system, social welfare. We have been the catalyst to all this problem. We played, collateral to all this. So if I will continue to lobby and scream for Fiji till there's a last breath in me. Yeah. And I hope while I'm still breathing, something would change here in Fiji. Yeah. The thing is, like I said, money is what's needed for us to go out there. We needed to go out there and actually continue the work. We can't stop now. We've already seen the problem. The huge numbers in custody, the arrest rates that's happened. St Giles, we don't have a drug and alcohol rehab in this country. We talked about school institution. Do we need to change? Yes, we need to change. Everything needs to happen now, not another 5 to 10 years down the line.
Kalesi, thank you very much for your time. That's the founder of Drug Free World Fiji, Kalesi Volatabu. Urgent action required. And as you know, Fiji Village Straight Talk, we talk straight. And it is about getting the information out, not hiding information. It is about accountability and transparency. And I hope that you take into stock the information that has been revealed tonight. Since this is quite a heavy issue and a big issue that affects us, and an issue that we should give it as priority, we will have a second series of this Fiji Village Straight Talk focusing on hard drugs and the issue of substance abuse. So production of that is also underway, and you will get to watch that later this month. We are looking at a special Straight Talk again, a second part of this on August 23rd at 7 p.m. Wednesday. But until next week, have a good evening.